Welcome back to Off the Curb. No rest for the Harbaugh wicked, as it were. So breaking news from Adam Schefter is the fourth merry-go-round with this Harbaugh cycle, and this year's coaching cycle is, I guess, coming to a conclusion. I see a lot of Michigan fans with this news that broke about 15 minutes ago that Sean Payton is headed to Denver. A lot of Michigan fans are taking some kind of a victory lap here, saying, told you so about Harbaugh. I just want to note that extension that has been announced in different forms 3 separate times has still not been signed yet. I've predicted from not the beginning, but from the last couple weeks that Harbaugh would end up staying at Michigan. I think that is where this is going to land, but I think it's funny that this is still a conversation and people are begrudged for having the conversation when the contract still is not signed. And it has been announced in different fashion 3 separate times. And by the way, it'll ultimately be at least 4, because when the ink actually is dry, they're going to announce it again. So the fact that you have to make 4 separate statements, each about 2 weeks apart, for the same thing is, to me, self-indicting. To pretend like that's not weird is dishonest at best, because it is weird. But I do think it's interesting. Part of today was going to be touching on this Harbaugh thing. I happen to know from talking to 2 different people that I trust that it was not completely made up from Mike Florio saying that Denver was a real possibility still in play. I think his information was just a little bit lagging from the updates. Basically, Denver, I guess, had stayed in that engagement process with Harbaugh, and the door was not completely closed on that. They were still talking to Harbaugh with Sean Payton as their primary target. That's my understanding. I believe it. So Florio, whose record is not great on this stuff to begin with, but this one, he didn't report it was a done deal. I think there was some smoke there. I want to get to what I reported today, and I'm first going to bring in Scott Bernstein, who talked about this a little bit with me at the time when it came out shortly after. But Scott Bernstein, one of the most respected writers in town, good friend of mine. Scott, welcome to the Off the Curb Jim Harbaugh half hour. But pleased that you're here with me on very short notice, Scott. What's up?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. I'll always take an opportunity to chime in and give my 2 cents on the Michigan program and Harbaugh. And despite what people think, I see people commenting on my social media. I'm a Michigan fan. I'm not a Michigan State fan. I mean, well, I root for both programs. I didn't go to either one of them. I went to Indiana, but I want Michigan to do well.
Well, I can't say I want Michigan to do well, but I will say when people do the whole rent-free, why do you care so much thing? First of all, I think it's dumb in any context. It's a rivalry. It is what it is. They care just as much about Michigan State. It goes back and forth. But the other thing I say is I own a media company that covers both schools, both programs, just like we cover the Red Wings and the Pistons. I mean, it's like if I'm doing a thing on the Red Wings, I don't expect an Avalanche fan to come in here and complain or vice versa. It's like we're covering what we cover. It's within our purview. And I think if your only defense of this kind of thing, whatever it is, negative, is rent-free or why do you care so much, I think that is sort of showing your ass. And Michigan State fans do it too, where you come at Michigan State for something legitimate. And if all we're saying is, hey, why do you care so much? You're kind of, self-indicting again there, right?
Michigan fans that are Harbaugh apologists are suckers.
Well, whether it's Harbaugh apologists or not, here's the.
I'm just saying, you can be a Michigan fan, you can be objective, you can criticize your coach while still realizing he's a great football coach. I mean, I'm not disparaging Jim Harbaugh. I'm saying he's a great football coach. He's just not a great human being.
He's not a great human being. Well, I'm not going to get into whether he's a great human being or not, but
I'm the most disingenuous human being that I can think of in recent memory.
Let's get into the objective measurables here. So obviously we're not going to go through the whole, tunnel incident, all that stuff. It's irrelevant really for today. But I do want to point out that when Donovan Edwards on the eve of that Michigan State game back in October had the anti-Semitic retweet of Kanye, it's some wicked shit that I don't even want to put out there again. We know that happened and we didn't love the response. Ben, can you throw up a little bit of us touching on this, what Scott said at the time about Donovan Edwards and the lack of punishment, and also Jim Harbaugh's response? Can you throw that up? Let's roll that.
Big fan of Donovan Edwards. Huge mistake that I don't think he took enough ownership for. and that was swept under the rug by the program.
Harbaugh didn't say a word about it.
He should have been sat down for that game.
At least the half or something.
No, he should have been sat down for the whole game.
I agree. So anyway, Harbaugh comes out after, and he's asked about, hey, why did Donovan Edwards play? Renier Saban is kind of grinding him a little bit on that point, and Harbaugh effectively said it was a mistake. It was an inadvertent action.
I don't know what that. I really don't know what that means. An inadvertent tweet.
Well, the actual term was inadvertent. It was a mistake, and it was inadvertent.
Right.
So kind of piggybacking off the Donovan Edwards glitch thing, basically the presentation from both the player himself, later recanted, and the coach was, this was it was a glitch. It was a mistake. It was a wrong button. It wasn't an error in judgment. It was a flukish thing where it could have happened to you, me, or anybody. Anybody could be hacked or have a glitch, right? So that was the position. Obviously, you didn't like it at the time, understandably so. And they come out with this statement via my friend, Jordan Acker, who I think, for the record, despite my bias, I do think this is a fair point. I think he's handled everything just fine. I think he was sincere in coming out with this. But Harbaugh comes out, or Acker comes out with this statement on behalf of Michigan addressing that. And Ben, can you throw up that graphic? Quote, Donovan Edwards is a good kid who made a mistake. I spoke to Jim Harbaugh and Mike Hart, and I'm thrilled that Donovan and the team are going to join me to visit the Holocaust Museum after the season and learn firsthand where hate speech leads. So I've been kind of keeping an eye on this, Scott. I wanted to pay attention to the follow through here because we were saying that this was an insufficient, inadequate response to begin with. I mean, that was our opinion. I know we shared it. We discussed that. I've been doing some digging into this the last couple of days. I was curious if there was any traction towards this. I have confirmed that as we're sitting here right now at the 1 month anniversary of the season ending, the visit has not taken place. There has been no conversation with anybody at the museum from the school about setting it up. And from what I'm hearing, Harbaugh did not want this intervention to begin with and has not been willing to entertain any discussions about getting it set up. So to anyone saying, oh, it's only been a month. First of all, team events of this size are scheduled months in advance. You got to think about how many people you're talking about moving, and you have to clear out the whole museum. So it's not happening tomorrow. I promise. It's not happening.
That's what's upsetting, Justin, is not the fact that it hasn't happened yet. It's upsetting that there doesn't seem to be any plan in motion to make it happen.
Exactly. If they had it scheduled for July, they're covered. It's on the schedule. It's not about the execution of the visit. It's about setting it up. And by the way, the clock didn't even really the clock started on them actually doing it a month ago. The clock started on them setting it up, 3+ months ago now? So you know when your off season is, you know what your holes are on your schedule. What do you make of this? I think this is kind of bad that they haven't made any move on this at all.
The Donovan Edwards situation, in my opinion, proved to be the tip of the iceberg. And what we have right now, and I'm going to call it like I see it. What we have right now is a University of Michigan program that is lawless. This is a lawless program. I don't know if we're quite at the level of the U football, in the 80s and early 90s, or UNLV basketball, but they ain't far behind, and they're making up ground quick because every single misstep has been compounded by self-inflicted errors on the university's part, on the media's part. Nobody taking accountability, nobody holding them accountable. It actually probably dates back to Dr. Anderson, but in terms of this past year, just one thing after another, and it's all excuses and cover-ups and being disingenuous.
I mean, and again, I can't emphasize this enough. We thought, and I think most people of honest view thought, that even what they were saying they were going to do was insufficient. I'm fine with going to the Holocaust Museum as part of this process. I think some of this kind of museum taking a sensitivity course, I think some of that, if not a lot of it's performative in a lot of these cases. I had no problem with that being a component of it. You thought, many people thought there should have been a suspension. I said at least for a half. You said for at least a game. But with that said, they have not even crossed the threshold. They haven't even met a very low standard that they set. We thought it was inadequate to begin with, And they didn't even do that. And I think if your argument is, and I want to get your opinion on this, am I not being fair? If your argument is this is an appropriate intervention, it's an important thing to do going to this museum, isn't that concept betrayed by the lack of even so much as a phone call to the museum since this happened over 3 months ago? The pledge, the season's been over a month. I just, you can't.
It's insincere, but everything about that program is insincere, so it shouldn't be surprising.
But it wasn't. I mean, I talked to Jordan at the time because he's the one that had the idea to go, that made the announcement. Jordan, I mean, you can think whatever you want. I am friends with him.
I shouldn't impugn Jordan. Jordan, I'm not saying Jordan was being insincere. I'm saying if the university told Jordan, yes, we're doing this, they were being insincere.
Well, but Jordan really, for whatever you think of the intervention, Jordan really is a passionate, he's, for the record, a Jewish guy and is really involved in this stuff. And Jordan, I know from talking to him at the time, that he genuinely thought it was a good thing for them to do. And, hey, like get these guys a little bit centered. And, this Kanye West stuff's flying all over the place. So you can think it was a bunch of BS. To the person who came up with it, it was a sincere, like, hey, this will be good. The guys need to be educated on this stuff. The Holocaust, his perception seemed to be the Holocaust education is not quite what it was when he and I were growing up. He's only a couple years older than me. I will defend Jordan as long as the day is that he was sincere. But Michigan as an institution has completely blown this off. And I do have, as part of this reporting, that it's not on the horizon. There's no discussion about even calling them. And one person in this circle, not Jordan, and believe me, Harbaugh's not talking to me either, but one person in that administrative circle told me that their honest belief is that it never happens. He doesn't think, as long as Harbaugh's the coach, that they're ever going on that trip. What do you make of that?
I don't think they will, and I don't think that anybody will hold them accountable, and I think that's why they think they can do it without being held accountable, because no one in this media is going to hold them accountable. It's laughable that we're in the market that we're in terms. We're not in Boise, Idaho. We're not in Cheyenne, Wyoming. We're in Detroit, Michigan. It's a top 10 market. At one point, it was a top 5 market. And the media around here is so weak when it comes to the real tough stuff, at least the sports media. And that's just sad. You got a lot of writers. I'm not going to name names, but got a lot of writers with either Michigan degrees or people like, I will name a name, people like Mitch, who obviously are compromised when it comes to writing about the University of Michigan or writing about any of the scandals that have erupted,
like the Donovan Edward thing. I mean, it's frustrating for me that it has to come from me, and it's in my tweets are out there with the Nassar stuff. Man, I was killing Michigan State during the whole Nassar situation. I was very critical of the whole Engler handling of that in the interim role that he was in. So I don't want to hear that stuff. Yeah, of course I'm biased. Obviously, I got a giant script state thing over my shoulder. I get it. We're all biased, but I do take institutions and programs to task, irrespective of whatever their school affiliation is or lack thereof. I'm sorry. To me, this is objectively wrong. And if your takeaway from this whole thing is, oh, Sparty tears, or, oh, why do you guys care so much? I honestly have to judge you on some level as a human being, because anybody of good faith would say, if you say you're going to do something, and that was your mitigation in terms of the PR mess that was there, here's our intervention, here's what we're doing. It's going to be great. It's important that we learn how to fight hate. And then you don't do it, and you show no intention of doing it. And everyone around the person who has to actually arrange this trip seems to think that it's never happening. If your response to that is, oh, whatever, why do you care so much? Honestly, I think you got some character problems.
It's on brand.
This is objectively wrong, right?
Yeah, no question. And I know I'm belaboring the point here, but if you don't think anyone's going to check you on it, then you're going to feel more empowered, more emboldened to do it. And the reactions that you do see from Harbaugh and the university in the last 3 months of scandal have been like, they're annoyed with having to answer questions, or they're annoyed with the idea that this is, that the information has pierced the that Michigan bubble and that people are talking about it, that they're put out by having to address it when they should have addressed it from Jump Street. And then there wouldn't it really be a problem.
Did you see when I shared the Mozzie Smith clip on Twitter? I mean, I was astounded. I stumbled across that looking for something else regarding that incident. There was no coverage of that remark from Mozzie Smith. Mozzie Smith, with the felony gun charge, later pled down, was asked at media day heading up to the playoff about, hey, like, were you ever considering the possibility that you would be suspended? And he was, to go to your point, like, stunned that anyone would even suggest that was a possibility. He said, Harbaugh's got my back. And he said he had the gall to say, chutzpah in your people's terms, to say it's not other people's business what happens to him. Like, right. I can't fathom that Mozzie Smith's quote, which is to a throng of Michigan reporters, by the way, was, to me, you just had a guy asked about the possibility of a suspension for a felony, which was, they got regionally a lot of pushback for that decision. You had the person in question come out publicly on microphone and say, it's none of your business. And nobody, it took me stumbling across it like 3 weeks later for it to see the light of day, for people to say, when the hell did he say that? What was that from? This museum thing has to come from me. It's like, come on, guys. How has there been no question? Isn't that somewhat a failure of the media? I'm not going to get into the blue wall stuff, whether it's a conspiracy or whatever, but just as a general matter, is that not, you're a media critic, a failure of the media that no one followed up on, hey, like, is this museum trip even in the works?
Yeah, it is a failure of the media, just like it's a failure of the media that we're 10 days removed from the Matt Weiss dismissal and nobody's written anything. I'm not saying that someone has to write, this is what happened. We know but to have nobody chime in and give any additional context or additional reporting, it's a joke.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens if, I mean, obviously, if Harbaugh has something, gets some NFL job, I don't know. I know they're filling up fast, but if he's just gone, that changes everything. But if he's still there, because the position is they are never going on that trip if he's there. That's what I was told was the perception, not for a fact.
Because he feels put out by it. He feels
he definitely feels put out
burdened by it, instead of embracing it and saying, this is something we need to do for PR purposes. This is something we need to do for the soul of the program.
He can have whatever opinion he wants, but don't you have a responsibility to the institution and your employer to just do the performative, senator kissing the baby routine? You said you were going to do it as an institution. You kind of have to go through it and suck it up, right? Even if you think, I mean, first of all, it's a great museum. The guy should maybe check it out. Take the free trip for your team. But even that aside, don't you kind of have to do it? Just go through it and get it over with.
You think so? You think that even if you were just going to go through the motions and be annoyed with it, you would still do it. But it appears that they're taking this stonewalling tactic, and they are. If I was a betting man, I'm putting my money that they'll never show up on Orchard Lake Road, and I would, Ben can hit the siren here, but I've known Donovan Edward since he was 14 years old. Like, I know him personally. And I've known him since he was 14 years old. And I have really nothing other than this one incident. I really have nothing negative to say about that young man. I think he is a genuinely good human being that has a good heart and that is going to be, continue to be a star at Michigan and then will have a career in the NFL. You give it a little context here for people that don't know this. I mean, Donovan Edwards grew up in West Bloomfield, went to West Bloomfield High School. This wasn't someone that came from a Detroit PSL school or came from Grand Rapids or came from a school downriver that has no Jewish students. He was surrounded by Jewish students his whole life. So that gives me some pause. I don't think he is an anti-Semite, but I think by the lack of accountability, you don't do him any favors. And just same with Mozzie Smith. I don't think you're doing anybody any favors by allowing this kind of stuff to just slide by and then teach them kind of this Michigan attitude that, well, as long as you're Michigan, you can do anything.
Yeah, I mean, my focus, I don't think I've said a word about Donovan Edwards other than mentioning that he's the person involved. He's a college kid. He did something dumb. Everyone I've talked to, including you, said that knows him says he's a great kid. I'm sure he is a great kid. It's not about him. I have no bloodlust for Donovan Edwards. He's actually my favorite player on the team. I've said that repeatedly. I love. He reminds me a lot of Marshall Faulk in the early 2000s. I love his game.
Great comp.
So it's nothing to do with Donovan Edwards really at this point. It's the institution. And I'm curious to see what happens because if the position, I do believe Harbaugh will be back next year. I think it'll probably be his last year, but we've heard that before. But I think he'll be back. And if the position is accurate that they're not going, is there any pushback in the media?
I would like to see, again, I'm not going to name names, but I know there are two very, very prominent members of the media here in Detroit that have direct ties into West Bloomfield. I would like one of those two, if not both of them, to make some type of statement condemning this and encouraging, even if it's just Donovan, and then it's not the rest of the team, encouraging Donovan. I'll take him. You can offer me up as the tour guide for Donovan Edwards. I would like to see, because of those prominent media members, knowing him personally, knowing that program, knowing that area, I'd like to see them kind of jump to the forefront of this. I have no idea if they will, but that's what I would like to see.
Well, I don't think they. I mean, I'm not sure who you're talking about.
It's not their response. It's not their responsibility. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that this is a required action, or I will think less of them if they don't do it. I'm just saying, knowing who they are, knowing their connections to Donovan, knowing their connections to West Bloomfield, knowing their connections to Michigan, I would like to see something from those people to kind of jumpstart this.
I mean, that'd be great. I don't even care where it comes from. Like, they can have a West Bloomfield connection or not. They can have a Michigan connection or not. Somebody other than me has to bring this stuff up. And again, and you said it's about the scheduling. It's not about the execution. It's so ridiculous that people's response to this in some cases is, oh, it's only been a month. Like, these schedules, when you have to move, I mean, how many people are we talking about here? Like 80,
100 people,
players, 80 to 100 people. Like, yeah. It's the logistics for the people involved. You have to, like I said, clear out the museum. Stop saying that it's only been a month. Give them more time. It's been 3 months since they said they were going to do it. If you had any intention of actually doing it, the time to make that call is the morning after you release a statement saying we're going after the season. Hey, here, you know what your availability is. You know when guys are on campus, off campus. What do you make? What's your general response? And we'll kind of finish on that point. What do you make of people saying, it's only been a month. Why do you care so much? Why should this matter to people that aren't huge Spartan homers like me? You're an objective guy that leans blue, if anything. Why should people give a shit outside of the Michigan State Sparty radio circle?
Well, it's common decency. How about that? Being sincere, good-hearted people. I don't know if it needs to be any more complicated than that. This was something that was pledged by a prominent alumni, a politician that I'm assuming had spoken to the university, had spoken to Donovan about this before he made that comment. And he put it out there. And I'm not blaming Jordan Acker at all, but someone maybe was being insincere with him. And people that want to use this as a way to engage in the rivalry or mudsling, it's disingenuous, because if the shoe was on the other foot, the Michigan fans would be going lunatic. And B, you're not doing your program any benefit by being an apologist or being a blind loyalist. It's the same thing as when I hear people, when the Lions started 1-6, and I hear people, the reason they're 1-6 is because the fans are so negative and the media is so negative. Like, no, that's not why. They deserve to be criticized, so they were criticized. Harbaugh, for those 5 years that he wasn't, 6 years where he wasn't doing the job that he was brought here to do, was legitimately criticized. Objectively, he deserved to be criticized. Now that he's turned it around, has taken Michigan to a level that I've never seen them at, I'll give him all the praise in the world as a head coach. I mean, he's done everything he said he was going to do and more. And now he's got this program poised to become a Big Ten dynasty if he wants it. But that's a whole other question, but I get really annoyed at whether it be Michigan State fans or Michigan fans that are just so, the tribalism, they're so blindly loyal that they can't see that there's an objective reason to be critical.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a couple of the different comments said, why do you care so much if some Michigan kid or group of Michigan guys goes to a museum or not? You guys are the one that said you were going. So don't get mad at me. It was your idea. It wasn't my idea. Well, it wasn't Mel Tucker or a member of the board of trustees.
That's the punishment for the tweet. That's the punishment for the tweet.
You chose your own punishment. So don't tell me the punishment's dumb. Not my fault. I didn't come up with it. You guys did. And to me, it comes down to an objective, very unfalsifiable truth. If you say you're going to do something, you pledge to do something, and you don't, that's wrong. That is as elementary as you can possibly get in terms of morals. That's something my 6-year-old daughter understands. If you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, that's not good. That's
especially
wrong.
In this climate of the widespread racial and ethnic insensitivities, for the University of Michigan, who considers themselves to be this kind of beacon of liberalism and inclusivity, and they're an elite institution globally, and they pride themselves with a certain approach to things. You would think that approach would include taking ownership, being accountable, being transparent, but it's not.
Last point. If they never go, as I anticipate, do we see something in the Free Press or Detroit News? Yes or no?
I bet there will be some type of story, but I don't think there will be multiple stories, and I don't think the story will be necessarily indicting. It will state a fact, and that will be it. Because I think that's how the media around here kind of assuages their own guilt for not really diving into some of this stuff, is by saying, oh, well, we wrote about it. But there's context, and there's volume, and there's real conviction. And other than one guy on the radio, Mike Valeni, he's the only person in this town that wants to hold the University of Michigan accountable.
Yeah, well, don't forget his partner. I think his legal name is With Rico. They call him With Rico now. He had to change it on his driver's license. It's With Rico now. All right, Scott Bernstein. We'll see. If they don't, I will. I mean, I don't care. And people can say whatever they want. This is an objective, right or wrong. I openly defended Michigan on the burger thing. I know it's bigger than a burger, but saying I think every school does this shit. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. This is wrong. You came up with the solution. If you think the solution's dumb as a Michigan fan, go complain to them. It's not my idea. This is what you guys came up with. You said you were going to do it. You haven't done it yet, and you've shown no indication that you're going to. And the people around the coach that has to actually coordinate this visit has indicated that he doesn't want to go and he's not interested in it. So shoot the messenger all you want. Scoreboard. They haven't gone. The museum hasn't heard from them. That was 3 months ago. Get your shit together. What's right is right. What's wrong is wrong. If Michigan State came out and said, we're doing XYZ administratively to correct this perceived wrong and didn't do it, you guys would never shut the fuck up about it. We know that's true. So just try to step out of it for 5 seconds and come to the elementary conclusion that if you say you're going to do something and don't, that's not good. Is that fair, Scott? We'll finish.
Yes, incredibly fair.
Scott Bernstein, love you, man. Appreciate you. Short notice. Ben, short notice. Love you too. Off the curb, Justin Spiro. Let's meet up at Churchill's, Scott. We're overdue.
Let's do it.
Spiro, off the curb. I was going to say Spiro Avenue Show. Off the curb, Justin Spiro. We'll see you, Scott. Then, thanks to Ben. I think we're going to get you in, Scott, with a certain Michigan State assistant coach at some point, former Michigan State assistant coach. So I got to grind on you a little bit about that one. But off the curb, Justin Spiro. We'll see you.